it seems like every year you've come in here and we ask you in this presser, what the next, what the waiver draft's going to be like and that kind of thing. Is it a different feel this year for you guys, the way your roster is built and the fact that you've been here for a while, that maybe the focus is on different things at this time of year, or is it kind of same bad story for this front office as far as what the next week holds?
Or when you look at the cut down scenario, our process is never going to change. Obviously, we're third in the claim order, but our needs are different than it was in year one when we had heavy claims and we're more so purging the roster. Now, always trying to canvas where we can make incremental improvements. So you look at roster spots, call it 46 or 53. Where there is opportunity for improving and creating competition on the back end, whether it's a special teams role, whether it's a depth role, whether it's a depth versatility role, multi-position flex. And as we get out of this next game, figuring out where our guys stack versus the other 31 clubs and, what they have to offer on the waiver wire, and then, seeing what the best combination is for us going into that first week.
Brandon, you guys were super high. Obviously, you traded up for Jalin Hyatt. You guys are super high on him. Why do you think he hasn't put it together yet, and do you still think that's coming?
Yeah, I'm excited for Jalin. He's put in the work. Biggest thing evident by him getting his weight up. I think the relationship with him and Russ is really going to be the opportunity to unlock him. When you look at what Jalin can do from just in terms of if you're playing single high coverage and he's got the ability to take the top off and keep the secondary honest, Russ's ability to throw the deep ball as evident in the last preseason game, that's a connection they've been working on. And the nice part is, as soon as Russ got here, he was very emphatic in saying that Jalin reminds him of certain guys that he had back in the Seattle days that could be strict, quick strike, explosive play guys where, they only need 2, 3 to 4 to 5 touches to be impactful in the game. So that relationship's been really good. Russ has been great in terms of the mentorship with Jalin, keeping his spirits high, and proud of Jalin. He's working. He never has gotten down on himself. He knows it's a constant grind, and he knows the talent he has. He's just frustrated, and he knows what we put into him in terms of trading up, and he wants to put a return in on that investment.
From a personnel side, how do you feel about the quarterback room? It's obviously a very different room. You have 2 veterans, first round pick that you drafted, and Tommy guy you worked with now for years.
Yeah, Jordan, when you look at the quarterback room, it's completely different for the most part. And in our offseason planning between Joe, Dabes, Kafka, Shea, was very intentional in terms of getting the right pieces and creating the right environment, one, for a young quarterback to grow in terms of Jaxson, but also, to win on the field. When you look at Russ's relationship with Shea goes back to their days at NC State. So there is already a rapport there, and you throw Jameis in the fold. Can't really put into words how impactful Jameis has been from the locker room standpoint. I know you guys see him around, and he has the funny sound bites, but his work ethic has been great for Jaxson. Whether it's doing late night yoga inside the weight room, mobility, meditation, all those things, it's really been great for a young quarterback to grow, and also just to see someone who's had a perspective outside this building on how to prep and be a pro.
You just raved about James. His name keeps coming up everywhere, though, as a potential trade candidate. I mean, do you view him as he has a role here no matter what? Or would you listen just based on where you guys are at that position?
I appreciate people that are interested, but Jameis is a New York Giant. With the way that he's gone about his business from day one, he's made it very intentional with the fact that he wants to be here and he wants to be here for the long haul. Teammates love him. His preparation process, whether it's the off-field things that he does in terms of community relations, Bible study, things in the locker room, galvanizing the group together, not just the quarterback room, but the offense as a whole. He's been comic relief, but he's also been a really good example of how to be a pro and handling your business in terms of prehab, rehab, post-game care. So I'm happy he's here, and he's going to continue to do those things. He hasn't wavered, and he hasn't been shaken by any distractions at all.
Deontay was another guy that you guys were high on. I don't think we've seen get the best out of him.
Yeah.
How do you get the best out of a guy like that?
When you look at what Deontay has done from year 1 to year 2, I think when you look at the same, call it chemistry from adding force multipliers, it was very intentional from us in terms of adding, what do you look at, Javon Holland, Paulson Adebo. That secondary room, not just Deontay was very young. From between Flott, Nubin, Drew Phillips, and Tay, they're all 24 years and younger. Adding in a Javon Holland, a Paulson Adebo, guys who are still young in terms of being 26, but have just a workman types approach that can help the work habits that Tay's started to adopt, and as well as our new coaches. Marquand Manuel has been instrumental in terms of the approach of looking back for the ball, refining the press technique, and just learn certain things that Tay wasn't used to doing at Maryland, and then it's different going from our old scheme to Shane's new scheme. So we're excited for Tay. He's met the challenge. Davis has heightened the accountability measures for that room, and we expect return. And he's had a good camp, and it's really just not taking the foot off the pedal. It's constant competition every day, and nothing's going to be given to him.
What does that mean, heighten the accountability measures?
Yeah, it's just you have to practice the way you play. It doesn't matter where you were drafted. The best production is going to lead who plays. And Davis has been very clear about that, and we wholeheartedly support that. It's, yes, we put investment into guys, but the best players are going to play. And it's not just going to be a game day thing. It's how you prepare. It's how you practice.
When you're talking that, though, I mean, obviously we know Tay is a first-round pick, but it's not like you're bringing a street free agent in to compete with him. I mean, Flott was a relatively high pick, and second day pick for you guys. How have you liked his development and where he's at? I mean, I know he's one of the youngest guys in his draft class, but coming along, I mean, I gotta imagine it's one of those things where whoever wins that competition, if the other guy is still competing, it's a pretty good win for this team overall.
Art, you hit it. It's depth regardless of who wins a position battle. Flott's been able to be a Swiss Army knife for us. He can play on the outside. He can play some inside nickel. And we can do situational matchups. Whether it's a certain flavor receiver that we're going against that Tay's going to match up with, with his height, weight, speed ability. And, Flott has high IQ. There's certain things that each guy does well. And it's our job to maximize and put him in the right position to be successful. And when you look at what Flott's done in terms of from year one to now, he's got his weight up. There's been situations where coming in light, being a young guy coming out of LSU, there's been some situations where he's had to, really battle being a physical guy at a lighter weight. Now he's got a little bit more armor on him, and just consistency. Again, the accountability measure is up. Neither one of those guys wants to miss practice. And it's almost an iron sharpen iron scenario where, every time they have a good rep, the next guy's cheering for him, but they know they have to step their game up and produce another good rep themselves. So it's been a really good spirited competition, and we know however it shakes out, we're going to have great depth.
What is it about this roster that gives you overall a better feeling about how the results of the season?
Jordan, when you talk about the roster, the biggest thing you can point to is the depth we have, the versatility we have. Look at the off-season construction. There was an emphasis on rush and coverage. Rush and coverage is going to age well and lend to an identity. Whether it's adding Abdul, adding Chauncey Golston in free agency, like we talked about, adding Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo, creating more turnovers on the back end, along with getting after the quarterback. And I just think what Russ has been able to do from a leadership standpoint on the offensive side of the ball, there's been a young group that's been able to mature with him. He can speak from having a championship pedigree, being in these high-pressure situations, and not just someone who's talking about it, he's lived it. And he's bringing guys along with, he's playing for legacy, and at the same time, too, he's helping develop the young guys that are around him in all the other position rooms. When getting AT back has been, a big thing. I know you guys see him out there today, and he's going to be an anchor for us. But just the strides that Jameis has taken, his hand placement being better, getting a healthy John Runyon, and then just look at the depth we've been able to create in terms of bringing in Marcus Bowe, bringing back some of our guys from last year. GVR being really the straw that stirs the drink from the character morale standpoint, doing a lot of the off-field things that aren't seen, from the all-line dinners to the extra film sessions. He's been really the torchbearer in that group that carries a heavy voice. And the synergy is really cool to see. Even James Hudson, when you see the physical nature that he plays with, it becomes infectious. He plays with that, call it controlled aggression, where you see it from him, you see it from Marcus Bowe, and a lot of those guys that are around him, they know, hey, this is the kind of brand of ball we want to play, and then it spreads to that room.
Where's Jaxson?
Charlotte, go ahead.
Where's Jaxson in his development? I guess where you brought him in there.
Charlotte, the process for Jaxson has been really clearly laid out from all the touch points we had with him through the spring. We knew, what we're getting. It was playing to his strengths right now, whether it's, playing with pace, his ability, you've seen it last preseason game, to manipulate his arm slots in the screen game, throw with touch, and just improving on the other nuances of the fundamentals. Obviously, our offense is not the easiest, but, what he's able to do in terms of on the daily to get tutelage from Russ and Jameis. We can bring him along at the right, call it pace, where we don't have to force him into scenarios that he's not comfortable with. And you see it from OTAs to mini camp to early training camp to the preseason games. It's just a comfort. The game is slowing down for him, and I just think from the rhythm and pace that he's playing with, and the tempo that we're able to push, it all lends to his strong suits. And then really having been able to even unlock all the athleticism that he has as a runner. You don't see a lot of the RPO and things like that nature that he's able to do as well. So we're excited to continue to progress and develop him. And Dave's, Kafka, Shea, they all have a plan, and it's right on pace. And we're happy with where he's at, and he's encouraged. And guys cling to him. We talked about it last time. He's got a kind of swagger and aura and element to him that he's the everyman. He can connect with the skill guys, to the linemen, to the receivers, to the DBs, and it doesn't matter old, young, or vet. He's got that cool way about him that guys cling to. Evan, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Evan Mills' development, just kind of how have you seen him take to being right guard now? Just how has his growth been?
Evan, with the biggest thing with Evan is what he's done from a balance perspective. At tackle, obviously, when he moves inside, the games happen a little bit quicker for him. In terms of rebiting or refitting his hands, that's the constant work from a technique standpoint. But especially playing with better hand placement on contact, better balance, anchoring, being able to keep the interior firm. Those are things that Evan's been able to do, but we need to continue to progress him, from not just creating the line of scrimmage, but just adjusting laterally in pass protection, be able to adjust versus counters. A lot of the things in space where a man at his size, it's a little bit more difficult for, but keep him progressing from a technique standpoint. And, Carm and James have poured into it, and Evan's taken to it. He's been all on board with the change, and he just wants to help the team any way he can. He wants to be the best version of himself. He knows nothing's going to be given to him regardless of draft status, and he's working every day in terms of just the technique, correcting his flaws, whether it's watching other guys on film, picking up tips and trades from guys like GVR and some of the vets, and then working on his timing. And I think when you look at the combo blocks, that's one thing he's done a better job with, is coming off with his departure angles and fitting up his combo blocks with good timing. So Evan's going to continue to grow, and he's fighting.
Brandon, now with so much work on Jaxson leading into the draft, what's something you've learned about him since he got here that you either didn't know or that you didn't know to this degree?
Yeah, Joy, that's a good question. With Jaxson, we put so much time into him in the pre-draft process, there really hasn't been any surprises. But I think the cool thing is seeing the way he preps in real time. I mean, he squeezes all the juice out of any type of methods, whether it's creating voice notes for himself, finding little incremental times where we may be on the bus and he's creating voice notes for himself and listen back to him on his headphones. Always just finding time to get better. The little things. I didn't know he was a yoga guy, and him and Jameis do extra mobility things within the weight room late at night. It could be have a nightly walkthrough at 6 and he's in there at 7:30 with Jameis. And the everyman aspect, that was expected. We knew the magnetic personality he had, his work ethic, but just the little wrinkles in terms of how that work ethic has materialized has been really cool to see.
We ask Kafka all the time, Brandon, about his experience with Mahomes sitting on the vet. You were there when Jalen Hurts was drafted.
Correct.
What was that experience like as it relates to Jaxson? Like, he sat on the bench for a while. The plan there, did it get accelerated at all with Jalin because of how he was performing? Like, what do you remember about that?
Yeah, Ryan, when you look at the process of, call it, developing the quarterback, seeing it from a different lens on the bench, I think it's critical. Not being forced to be in the game and play and take those live reps before you're ready for it, and you may be ready at a time before you hit the field, but when you can see a perspective of, okay, how does the play comes into the game? How does sudden change work? When you have to deal with everything that goes on before the ball is snapped at the line of scrimmage, from different cadence, working with the center, coverage that disguise, and how you're adjusting to it. I think having that lens of being at that bird's eye view with the OC, the quarterback coach, the head coach, depending on who your head coach is, that can tell you, hey, this is in real time. Like this is what we're doing, and this was the right read. This is a secondary read, and learning on the fly versus call it being thrown in the bathwater before you're ready. And it's not saying you don't have that same approach, because Jackson's going to approach every practice, every game as if he's going to play. But it's having the ability to see the different lens of how the game's going, and it's slowing down for him. And then when he's time to play, when he's ready, he's able to do that with the utmost confidence because he's take these secondhand reps from being, the guy that's seeing it from the bird's eye view. And it was the same way with Jalin. You pluck him in the game now, and they've envisioned themselves making these plays. They've envisioned the coverage reads, and they've gone through, call it a cycle that's different than college. And in college, you're not having the same type of call it rigorous looks, rigorous plays that you have to go through. Some of the verbiage is minimal in college based on what they're asked to do there versus what they're asked to do once they get to our level. So that whole total package is what sitting can allow you to really accomplish and get that comfort level.
Brandon, how has your role evolved since you got here? Like, what more is on your plate now as far as like daily and big picture responsibilities compared to when you first arrived as assistant GM?
Pat, the good thing about, when you ask that question about the role changing, I'm forever grateful and fortunate for Joe, just the way he's treated me in this role. He always says, hey, if I ever get sick, get hit by a bus, I want the show to never stop rolling, and you're privileged to everything. Whether I'm in a meeting with him, whether it's a debrief, whether it's a prep, we're going through these things hand in hand, where I know that doesn't happen everywhere, where I'm really fortunate for Joe. And this off season we were able to add a new sports nutritionist, redo our player development department, hiring player development VP and also player engagement director. Then same times too, making changes to our sports performance department. Joe being so open in terms of sharing ideas and inclusion in the process. And I know that doesn't happen everywhere, but the fact that he's open, pull back the curtain for me and allow me to be hand in hand with him. It's been a process that started when we got here, and it hasn't changed. But there's just every year has its own different challenges and different requirements, and he's brought me along the way with him.
You've told us stories in the past about scouting some of these off the beaten path guys, and you've got a couple with Turbo and Chapman who have really picked up steam over the last couple of weeks. I don't know if you want to talk both, but what have you seen from those guys, and is there satisfaction to see from the scouting process to now where they are in the NFL?
Yeah, Art, the development of our young guys, one, hats off to our college department for identifying them. Two, our pro scouting department, that's very instrumental on really having an influence on which guys are on practice squad. We treat our practice squad like a AAA program. It's our pipeline, and we want guys that are on the practice squad in year one be able to push for a roster spot in year two or contribute in some facet in year one. When you look at Turbo, the way that we acquired him, he had an eligibility waiver issue at South Carolina. We had our scouts that were convicted on the talent, saw him at Columbia, knew that he had rare speed. Like, he's a 10-2 100-meter guy. He has speed that just doesn't roll out of bed. Not everyone can duplicate the speed that Turbo has. With him, the work on the practice squad last year, his hands have improved incrementally. You guys have seen it the first two games in terms of in the preseason, in the screen game. The explosiveness and the speed were always there, but the route running, the hands, the hand-eye coordination, the run after catch, that's all things that have been a work in progress. So it's hats off to our college guys in identifying him and our pro guys setting on the table to develop him on practice squad. Along with Elijah, we talked about Elijah's background last year. Some of the moonlighting fullback stuff that you guys see, that was identified by our college guys at SMU. It's not the way that he lives and makes his money, but it's an additive and a versatility piece that he's able to do, whether it's special teams, whether it's fullback, adding into his mainstay at defensive line. Those are things that make him unique. And I think the guys this year, you look at a Bo Collins, a guy who was a highly decorated high school player. He's 6'3" with almost an 80-inch wingspan and a 38-inch vertical. And he's a guy that had the injury bug through college, but he was able to string together at two different programs a high level of aptitude of learning two different systems, and there was enough flashes for our guys to like him. And you're starting to see those flashes now with us. You saw it in the last game catching the deep ball from Russ, and he's been a pro's pro everywhere he's been, and he's kind of built those calluses up from early career injuries and come out on the other side. So that's another anecdote of our college guys identifying a player, seeing the traits that aren't very common, and believing in our position coaches and there's really that collaborative process of our position coaches fighting for a guy, wanting to develop him, and then us getting him in the building, and then really our pro guys, saying, hey, where does this guy fit in terms of challenging for a roster spot, or can we see him at some point in year 1, year 2, knocking on the door to contribute in a certain way?